I work night shift security at a beach house that nobody vacations in. That's not poetic exaggeration either. I mean it literally. Silverwood Beachhouse sits on the edge of a coastal cliff where the Pacific winds howl loud enough to drown out your thoughts. It was once a luxury summer rental back in the 90s. Marble floors, ocean-facing windows, wrap-around decking. The kind of place you'd imagine celebrities hiding out in between scandals. But now, it's abandoned, forgotten, or more accurately, avoided. And despite all that, someone keeps the property active, maintains it, hires night staff. Me, I took the job because rent's due and options are slim when your resume reads like a horror novel already. After what happened at Redwood Asylum, no one wants to hire you for domestic security work, even if you have the scars to prove your experience. The recruiter told me the pay was above industry standard due to the remoteness and client confidentiality. But I didn't ask too many questions. I needed the cash. The only catch? The rules. They were handed to me as I arrived, printed on cracked, ivory yellow cardstock that looked like it had been rescued from a fire. The ink smudged at the corners. There were exactly 8 of them. And my handler, a man who wouldn't give me his name, told me to follow them as if my life depended on it. Because it did. I'll read them to you the way I got them. Rules for night staff. Silverwood residents. Ensure all coastal-facing windows are fully shut and locked before 1:13 a.m. Do not enter the basement, even if someone comes up from it. At 2 a.m., you may hear knocking at the back deck. Ignore it, no matter how many times it repeats or how human it sounds. If ocean mist reaches the third-floor stairwell, evacuate immediately. The mirror in the hallway by the guest room does not reflect people after 3:03 a.m. Avoid looking into it past this time. A porcelain-faced man may ask to use your phone. He isn't real. Let him finish his sentence, then close your eyes for 10 seconds. If you find sand on the kitchen counter at any point in the night, sweep it into the fireplace and burn it. Come sunrise, do not watch the ocean. Not directly, not through the glass, not even in reflection. Simple, right? Not exactly. The air at Silverwood feels staged, performative, like the beach house has been waiting for just the right kind of visitor. It's quiet, yeah, but in the way a hunting blind is quiet, poised, predatory. Let me take you back to my first shift, fresh off the briefing, satchel in hand, coffee thermos full to the brim. I arrived at 10:48 p.m., just before the moon hit the waterline outside. The man who greeted me, the one I mentioned earlier, wasn't wearing a uniform or name tag. He didn't smile. just unlocked the front gate, glanced at the sky like he was timing something, and handed me the keyring, flashlight, and that printed sheet of rules. And then he got back into his car and drove off without another word. I stepped inside the beach house, locking the door behind me, and immediately felt like I wasn't alone. It wasn't noise, just tension, like walking into a staged crime scene or a dream you weren't supposed to interrupt. The place looked pristine, sterile, like it didn't want to be lived in. I did a sweep of the main floor, covered the dining room, sitting room, old cobwebbed library. Everything orderly, except that the kitchen window was cracked open slightly, letting the breeze drag salt through the hall like invisible fingers. I shut and locked it, just to be sure. Then I noticed the vents breathing, not in the central air kind of way, more like exhalation. I chalked it up to bad vibes and caffeine jitters. My watch said 12:44 a.m. when I reached the second floor. About 30 minutes to go until the most specific rule on the list. The coastal-facing windows needed to be locked before 1:13 a.m., which was fine. Plenty of time to... The third-story light flicked on by itself. Nowhere on the rules was anything said about lights. But the top floor was supposed to be uninhabited. The entire building was. I hesitated. Then, against better judgment and with flashlight drawn, I climbed the stairwell. The third floor was narrower than I expected. Low ceilings. One long hallway. Doors on either side. And at the end, a wide, arched picture window looking straight out onto the ocean line. The source of the light. I moved toward it cautiously, passing door after door that didn't feel entirely closed, if you get what I mean. Like an inch of space existed, even if you saw otherwise. The smell of seaweed hung in the air, but not fresh-tied. The rotting kind. Atriums and kelp and barnacle salt. When I reached the ocean-facing room, I stopped. All four windows were propped open. The sound of waves crashed into the hallway, vicious and full volume. The air was dense, heavy with something floral and unfamiliar. I slammed the first one shut, clicked the latch into place, then the second. And when I reached the third one, I froze. There were footprints on the window ledge, bare, wet, leading inward. I stared at them, heart hammering like a piston. They vanished by the time I looked again, just dissolved into the floorboards. Salt residue without an owner. I shut and locked the remaining windows. At 1:12 a.m., I checked my watch. At 1:13 a.m., the house exhaled. There's no other way to describe it. The walls pulled slightly inward like they were drawing breath, and the glass in the chandelier above me shimmered like ripples in a puddle. Then, silence. Nothing else happened. No knock, no whisper, no cold spot. But I knew in my bones that if I'd ignored that rule, even by a second, there'd be one less man walking out of that shift alive. I returned to the second floor, shoes damp from sea air, head pounding like I just survived a car accident I didn't remember happening. The beach house was quiet again. Too quiet. The kind of lull you get after something's observed you and chosen, for now, not to act. I checked the time. 1:27 a.m. Next up was Rule 3. At 2 a.m., you may hear knocking at the back deck. Ignore it no matter how many times it repeats or how human it sounds. Emphasis on human. As I passed the guest wing hallway, something shifted in the air. Not temperature, pressure. Like when a plane is about to take off and your ears pop except reversed. The hallway seemed longer than it had been 10 minutes ago. I counted 9 steps from the linen closet to the guest room earlier. This time it took 14. I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. The mirror by the guest room caught my attention just then. Subtle, like a ripple in the corner of my vision. Rule 5 said to avoid it after 3:03 a.m. But right now, it was about 1:45. Still, I kept to the far wall when I passed it. The hallways groaned beneath my weight. Old salt-logged wood, unsteady nails, floors that creaked half a second before you stepped. I made my way down to the utility lounge. That's what the clipboard had called it. In reality, it looked like a glorified sitting room with an old love seat and a vintage radio dialed to a dead frequency. The kitchen was just beyond, and I had this sick instinct pulling me back there. If something was going to go wrong, it'd start at the heart of the house. That's when I saw it. Grains of sand on the edge of the countertop, too dry to have blown in from the coast, too precise to be tracked in by boot. They were laid out in a circle, not a big one, about the size of a tea saucer, perfectly formed on the hard marble surface. No footprints, no trail. Just the circle. Rule 7. If you find sand on the kitchen counter at any point in the night, sweep it into the fireplace and burn it. Funny thing is, I hadn't noticed the fireplace until I saw the rule. But there it was. Small, blackened with decades of use. Set into the wall near the arch that led back to the main foyer. I grabbed the fireplace brush with a trembling grip and swept the sand carefully off the marble, trying not to break the pattern. As if my instincts were screaming, the circle meant something, something it wanted remembered. But I wiped it, every grain, into the hearth, lit a match. The sand ignited immediately, not like paper, like gasoline. Flames burst up with this soft whoop, blue-tinted flashing patterns on the wall that didn't belong to fire, silhouettes of things without faces, thin arms, lopsided heads, shapes that tilted like they were watching from inside a warped aquarium. And just as fast, it was gone, reduced to a curl of grey smoke that smelled like rust and salt. 1:57 a.m. 3 minutes to go before Rule 3 came into play. I walked through the kitchen slowly, heart thudding. The back of the house had large floor-to-ceiling glass doors that led to a wraparound deck. It wasn't well lit, especially at night. Beyond was nothing but black shoreline and ocean. Even the stars felt reluctant to shine above this place. At exactly 2 a.m., I heard it. Knock once, soft, hollow. Knock, knock. Twice more, knuckles, too precise. 3 slow taps, then silence. I stood frozen, not breathing, not blinking. Rule 3 had been very clear. Do not respond. Do not investigate, no matter how human it sounds. So I didn't. Still, the temptation built in the back of my mind like a heat. It's hardwired into us. To answer the door, see who's knocking. My brain kept flashing to possibilities. Someone stranded, soaked, begging for shelter. A fisherman, a kid, a missing hiker from the news drop earlier this week. I closed my eyes. Knock. Again. This time, 6 times. Slower. More deliberate. Like it knew I was listening and wanted to test how much I could take. I retreated from the kitchen, slowly, never turning my back to the glass, and moved past the dead fireplace. No more sand, no voices, just knocks. They didn't stop until 2:13 a.m. 13 minutes of perfectly rhythmic tapping, like a metronome programmed into my nerves. When the knocking finally stopped, I dared to return to the kitchen. The glass doors were fogged slightly, but otherwise untouched. No footprints, no smudges, no leftover sound. But I swear, on everything I love, I saw an outline in the condensation on the glass. One handprint, upside down. Fingers extended upward like someone had been dangling from above, not standing at the door. I didn't check the deck, didn't even open the door. I returned to the foyer, sat in the ancient wing-back chair with my notebook. I logged the knocking pattern, details of the hand, length of time, trying to make anything feel controllable. My flashlight flickered. When I looked up, the hallway mirror, the one by the guest room, had turned slightly. No breeze in the hallway, no open window, no movement in the house. But it had pivoted just a few degrees toward me, enough that I could now see part of my reflection, even from the foyer. The rules said 3:03 a.m. for that mirror, and it was barely 2:30. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My reflection wasn't moving either. I mean, at first it was. It mirrored me perfectly. But then I blinked, and it didn't. I turned in real life. The reflection stayed facing forward. I looked away. And when I glanced back, the mirror was normal again. I should have been terrified. But instead, I was calm. Terrifyingly calm. The kind of numbness that follows when your brain decides panic is useless. There's nothing to run from if the walls are the predator. I checked my watch again. 2:44 a.m. Fog had begun creeping in around the window panes. It wasn't raining, but the mist came fast, rolling off the coast like a living thing. Rule 4. If ocean mist reaches the third-floor stairwell, evacuate immediately. So I ran straight to the third-floor stairs. And sure enough, there was a trail. A thin line of glistening condensation weaving down the carpeted steps like someone had spilled ocean water inch by inch into the spine of the house. I turned on the main hall lights. There it was. Wet fog gathering at the curve where second floor meets third. It looked harmless, peaceful even, like a lazy eastern morning rolling in off the deck. But it wasn't. I saw it in the light, the shapes inside it. Not full bodies, not yet, just bow, movement. Figures suspended in the waves of mist, faces without eyes, shoulders too narrow, fingers too long. I didn't bother grabbing my things. Just sprinted to the front door, unlocked it, and stepped outside into the bitter cold of coastal wind and a pitch-black cliff road. The house groaned behind me, and then the porch light turned off on its own. The mist didn't follow me. It stopped exactly at the threshold, as if the house was breathing again. The wind outside stung like static. I stood barefoot on the gravel path, my breath visible in the air, even though it was midsummer. The trees didn't sway. The waves had gone quiet. Even the insects seemed to be holding a collective breath, as if waiting to see what I'd do next. I should have left, should have called a cab, walked to the highway, hitchhiked through cliffs if I had to. But something gripped me tighter than fear. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe resignation. I didn't turn away from the house, I watched it. The dark windows, the way condensation crawled along the glass from inside like reverse rain. Then, bang! The front door shut behind me. Not slammed, just shut. Firm, deliberate. The kind of closing doors do when someone pulls them quietly from the inside. I reached for the knob. It was cold, greasy with salt, but unlocked. The moment it opened, a breeze exhaled across my face, warm this time, the opposite of what I expected. The beach house wanted me back. What kind of prey makes you feel welcomed? I stepped inside. slowly. The mist was gone, totally receded, like it never existed, the carpet dry, the walls warm. I checked my watch. 3:01 a.m., which meant one thing: 2 minutes until the rule I feared the most. The mirror in the hallway by the guest room. Rule 5. The mirror does not reflect people after 3:03 a.m. Avoid looking into it past this time. I should have stayed away. I should have waited in a different room, kept busy until the sun came up or the house decided to rest. But I felt pulled, not drawn, not misled, commanded, like standing near the edge of a cliff and your own heartbeat whispers jump. Not because you want to die, but because part of you wants to prove you won't. I walked to the hallway. 1 minute left. The mirror hadn't turned this time. It faced forward. Tall, silver framed, cracked slightly along the corner, like an eye swollen shut. I stood just outside its reach. Couldn't see my reflection yet. I didn't want to. I waited until 3:03 ticked on to the digital clock in my hand. And then, slowly, I stepped into view. I was gone. No reflection. Just the hallway. Wallpaper. Paint. The walls behind me. But not me. As if I simply wasn't real enough to appear. A moment passed. Then the glass began to fade. What I mean is, it changed texture. No longer smooth. It turned watery. Like rain sliding upward instead of down. And behind the false reflection, something stepped into view. Not me, not close, but similar. It took the same stance, same posture, but its head was tilted just slightly further than it should. Its eyes were hollow, not black, not bloodied, just missing. Clean, smooth sockets like reality hadn't finished rendering it. Its mouth was closed, then open wider, far too wide. I gasped and it moved, not like a reflection, not in sync with me. It leaned closer to the glass, and inside those empty eye pits, I saw the beach, not our beach, something deeper, older. Waves that didn't crest, sky that didn't end. The water within it pulsed red beneath a crimson moon that hadn't risen in our sky for thousands of years. And in the distance, beyond that impossible beach, I saw more mirrors. Endless, infinite, each one showing someone else. Some version of me, some version of others, standing, watching, some screaming, some smiling too wide. Shadows slithered between them like hands dragging from dimension to dimension. I staggered backward, heart pounding so loudly I thought the glass might crack with the sound alone. Then, The mirror fogged over, and on the glass, letters appeared. You looked first. I stared at the words. They weren't written in Sharpie or lipstick or blood. They were frosted, etched by cold fingers from the inside. I stepped away, too fast, tripped over a hallway rug, caught myself on the doorframe, and when I blinked again, the glass was empty. Mirror intact. No reflection, but no writing either. 3:08 a.m. I scribbled the event in my logbook, hand shaking. The notebook itself now felt heavier, like the weight of the words I was writing down literally meant something to the house. Like I wasn't just recording events, I was being graded. The silence returned, thicker now, suffocating. A kind of silence that pressed into your skin and left pressure marks behind. I needed light, bright, clean light. I made for the second-floor sunroom, where the ancient standing lamp still glowed from earlier. Something about that particular space felt safer, more alive. When I reached it, though, the lamp was tipped, not shattered. Tipped, deliberately. And in its place, on the armrest of the nearby couch, sat an object that hadn't been there before. A porcelain mask, white, cracked down one eye, mouth shaped midward, eyes painted on with black strokes, one subtle tear drawn beneath the left. Rule 6. A porcelain-faced man may ask to use your phone. He isn't real. Let him finish his sentence. Then close your eyes for 10 seconds. I hadn't heard anyone ask yet, but the mask chilled the room with its presence alone. It had weight, not physically. I never touched it to check, but spiritually, like it took more space than it should. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I froze. No one should have been calling me. Not out here. I pulled it out. The screen read, "Unknown. Would you mind if I threw it." The phone clattered to the hardwood floor, screen spiderwebbing inward. The ringtone cut instantly. The mask was gone. So was the cold. I bent over, picked up the shattered phone. Blank screen now, dead. I counted to 10, just in case. Nothing moved. Then again, maybe it didn't need to. I looked toward the fireplace. Ash pieces sat cooling now. The circle of sand long gone. But the impression remained burned into the memory of the brickwork. Faint, almost gone, but not quite. It wasn't just rules I was following. It was ritual, some awful sequence, some game. 3:31 a.m. Something flickered upstairs. A sound I hadn't heard before. Like a dragging chain across hardwood or shells rolling in a drain pipe. It came from the attic. Not the third floor. The ceiling above it. I didn't even know there was an attic until I heard the sound. There was no rule about it, which made it worse. I forced my legs to move. Silent steps back up to the upper floor. Hallway still soaked in that faint seaweed rot. Guest door cracked open wider now. The mirror, dark as slate. I reached the top of the staircase, turned and looked up. Sure enough, just above the linen closet was a loose ceiling panel, shifted just a few degrees, enough to suggest movement, enough to suggest something had gone in or come out. I stared upward, heard the dragging sound again. Closer. Something brushing against the inside of the ceiling, like fingers tapping. Not frantic, playful. And then, tap, tap, tap. Right above me. Footsteps? Crawling? I couldn't be sure. I remembered what the man at the gate had said when I started. Follow the rules exactly. The house tests for memory. Break sequence, and it breaks you. I didn't know if that meant curiosity counted, but I didn't plan to find out. I stepped away from the pulley cord, backed down the stairs, and made for the office on the first floor, closest to the front of the house. It's where the logs were kept. Old security notes, files, visitor reports. I'd skimmed them earlier. Now I needed them. Maybe someone else had reached 4 a.m. I flipped the light switch. The bulb fizzled, popped out. The room fell dark, except for the weak spill of moonlight outside. I reached for the drawer. It opened too easily. Inside, one file, labeled just 2 words. You left. No pages inside. Nothing to read. No timestamp. No log. Just the implication that someone else had gone, and the house remembered. I didn't open the file again. Didn't need to. The message was clear. This place didn't forget the ones who dared to leave. Maybe that was why the position was still vacant. Why the note wasn't addressed to someone else. Because the house had written it for me. I backed out of the office, eyes locked on the doorway, heart digging its way up into my throat. I couldn't hear the dragging above anymore. No mirror tricks, no knocks. But that didn't mean escape. If anything, silence here meant alignment. Things slipping back into position, waiting for the next scene to start. And the next rule. There was only one left. Rule 8. Come sunrise, do not watch the ocean. Not directly, not through the glass, not even in reflection. I checked my watch. 4:49 a.m. Not long left. The sky outside had started shifting tones. From the dense navy of pre-dawn to a soft, unsettling gray. You'd call it beautiful if you didn't know better. But beauty isn't safe. Not here. I paced the foyer, gripping the broken phone like it still held charge. I looked for distractions. Anything to focus my mind away from the dread rising with each passing minute. I waited. and waited more. And then came the whisper. From every wall, every stairboard, every vent, just one word. Look. I backed into the library, shut the door behind me, and turned off the antique lamp. Total darkness, except a glimmer of soft light bleeding under the doorframe. The house glowing with morning. But I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't look. The whispers kept going. Look, look, look. One voice, then two, then dozens. All in my head, all in the walls. Every angle of the house seemed to crowd in on me, forming mouths. Look! But I didn't. Not even as footfalls began to creak outside the library door. Not even as porcelain brushed wood like fingertips reaching under. Not even when something knocked from inside the chimney. I curled into the corner and whispered to myself, I will not look. The pressure in my skull spiked. My left ear rang. My eyes burned from how hard I was squeezing them shut, but I endured. The whisper stretched thinner, fainter, like fog pulled away by sunlight, and then silence. When I opened my eyes, it was bright in the room. Natural light streaming through the filtered curtains. Steady, safe. My watch read 6:12 a.m. I heard birdsong. I stood slowly and walked toward the front of the house. The mirrors were still, the mask gone. The sand vanished. Windows shut, lights off. No rot, no whispers. No rules posted anymore. No man waiting by the gate. Just daylight and the sound of tide returning to a beach once haunted. But as I crossed onto the gravel path and headed to my car, I couldn't help glancing back. And in the third-story window of Silverwood Beachhouse, behind the pale curtain, I saw someone watching me, wearing my face.